There is little doubt one has no rational choice but to be an obedient servant to a force as awesome as the higher, to a force as all-encompassing as the absolute itself. But the ability to choose is the only process distinguishing a slave from a servant. A slave is compelled to do, has no choice but to obey. A servant, on the other hand, chooses to do, has a choice, is free to accept or reject. For a servant, the choices may not all be necessarily in their best interest, but the choices are the servant's choices to make nevertheless. Many in our society would claim the outside of the circle does not exist. But what then do they suggest the universe is expanding into? What then do they suggest the universe was placed within when it was created? What then do they suggest lies outside the deformation of the universe's surface? Astrophysicists suggest occurs. What then do they suggest the first cause existed, if not outside the cosmos, before the cause and effect universe existed, before our universe was initiated? What then do they declare as to the origination of the physical, which all major religions over the eons have recorded within all their writings? The secularists, the materialists, the atheists of the world would have the individual believe what they say is truth, believe there is no creator, believe there is no higher, believe man is the grantor of all rights individuals have granted to them, and thus believe that man bequeaths, man can morally take away. The secularists of the world would have individuals in society owe their allegiance to men and not to a higher order. If the secularists are unable to convince individuals in society of their beliefs, then the secularists know they, the secularists, will never be able to subdue and bend society to their will. And the secularists will therefore fail to become the master of society, become the power brokers of humanity. Free will, the ability to choose, understanding the function of level 4. With no level 4 experienced, there is no knowledge of one's true essence. There is no possibility of one's true essence becoming the master of one's journey in the physical, and there is no possibility of becoming the master of one's ethereal journey. As such, is there any doubt as to the significance of the fourth way? Figure 726 demonstrates the physical machine asleep, demonstrates what the atheists and the secularists want humanity to believe is the only form of reality. In the Gurdjieff Society, we recognize there is an existence which we call the silence, and this existence can be added to the 3 levels demonstrated in Figure 726. In the Gurdjieff Society, we recognize that the silence is a location which we can enter. It is the void. It is the nothingness. And we, upon entering this void, see nothing, hear nothing, for there is nothing but nothingness itself located there. But eventually, with enough persistence, enough patience, and enough bravery to re-enter the void over and over, we begin to sense that there is something in that void, in that nothingness. What? We can't exactly be sure of, but we sense it nevertheless. Eventually, if one enters the silence enough, if one enters the silence leaving behind all forms of sensory, emotional, and mental thoughts and inputs, even leaves behind the hope and expectation and desire for a understanding of something being in the silence, one will strengthen the sense of what it is that is present within the silence. If one enters the silence enough times, truly enters the silence with no desires, no hopes, no wishes to encounter this apparent presence within the silence, a strange thing can happen. The silence all of a sudden becomes brilliantly lit up, and one can sense a form of glow spreading throughout the darkness, and one begins to realize that the glow is not coming from outside of oneself, but rather the glow, the light, is coming from oneself and is originating within one's self. At this point, the individual becomes what is known as man number 4. And when one steps out of the silence and back into the physical, regardless of what level of the physical one re-enters at, one finds that they have changed, that they sense that these thousands of physical and emotional and mental egos exist, but are no longer in control of oneself. This point of becoming a level 4 individual, a man number 4, can never be reversed. It is what we call in the Gurdjieff Society reaching the top of the stairs, what we call the beginning of one's true journey. It is a point which reveals to the individual that they are more than a physical being. And part of the next journey becomes an eye-opening recognition that one has a purpose in life. And not only that one has a purpose, but recognizes what that purpose is and becomes comfortable with that purpose. There are many eye-opening and awe-inspiring adventures that lay ahead for man number 4. One of these is the realization that having found one's true self, having released one's soul from the inundation of false egos in the physical, one begins to realize that that soul never disappears. And even when one steps over into the ethereal world, one remains an independent, well-formed soul. The ethereal is as much an environment as is the physical, although the characteristics of the ethereal are different from that of the physical. The physical incorporates time, the ethereal timelessness. The physical incorporates space, the ethereal spacelessness. The physical incorporates mass, the ethereal masslessness. The physical incorporates cause and effect, the ethereal no cause and no effect. The physical incorporates energy at one level. The ethereal incorporates what we might call energy, but actually has none of the properties of energy. The physical incorporates physical existence. The ethereal incorporates ethereal existence. The physical incorporates physical machines. The ethereal incorporates ethereal machines. Now the model of the whole of reality begins to take form, and the significance of the individual's true essence, traversing the physical, begins to unfold. The beginning of our species' significance begins to take form. We can model this reality that is embraced by the Gurdjieff Society, where World 1 is located within World 2, using a diagram such as figure 732. The outside location demonstrated within the square or rectangle is reality world 2, is knowing of knowledge, is omniscience, and is the location where entities of knowing, discrete knowing, individual knowing, can be found. It is a location where existence is comprised of verbs of action. The circle encompasses reality world 1, the physical universe or universes, in which case there would be different circles within the rectangle. The figure the circle encompasses is the physical universes, and omniscience and time and space and matter and energy is where E equals mc squared is filled with objects regarding nouns that are active. And the dot within the circle represents you, the physical you, the 3 levels of your physical, and the intangible you, which is located within yourself and is your true ego, is the I that the Gurdjieff members strive to find. It is the knowing you. It is your true essence. And you, your true essence, is submerged in E plus mc squared. Today in reality, there is a term for this diagram. It is called panentheism. Panentheism is a Greek word which means all inside God. The lower within the higher. World 1 within World 2. The physical within the ethereal emerges as the model of the whole of reality. The diagram clearly shows how it is that the divine, the ethereal, World 2, transcends the physical. But the transcendence does not take place in the typical way we look at it in Western observations today. Rather, the transcendence takes place in a process called separation through inclusion, where the universe is located inside the ethereal. Present-day Western society looks at the separation of the ethereal and the physical as being separation through exclusion, where the universe is outside of the ethereal. The problem with the Western perception of the physical being located outside the ethereal is that no one can tell you what separates the two, what lies between the two. Whereas the Gurdjieff Society's perception of reality, where the physical lies inside the ethereal, clearly shows there is no separation, and the only thing that exists between the two is the silence itself. The name for this diagram shown is panentheism. The lower within the higher, World 1 within World 2. The physical within the ethereal emerges as the model of the whole of reality. The model demonstrates what's called symbiosis, our purpose to circumvent eternal recurrence, grow the higher's knowledge, grow our timeless environment of knowing by creating unique experiencing for the higher, for God, for the eternally unchanging. That is our purpose. Growing knowledge, expanding understanding, generating experiences does not change the eternally unchanging, for knowledge, understanding, and experiences are nouns. And as we shall see in topic 9, the eternally unchanging is a verb, not a noun, is knowing. Thus, the eternally unchanging does not change when knowledge, understanding, and experiences change. What does change is the quantity of what the eternally unchanging knows. What does change is the quantity of what is known. Sparks of the divine become the means by which the eternally unchanging circumvents eternal recurrence, and in turn, the means by which sparks of the divine circumvent eternal recurrence, thus the formation of a symbiotic relationship. Next, we are going to look at some of the other adventures a level 4 is able to experience. We're going to look at 6 realms in which the level 4 can stand. We're going to use the diagram of everything living to help us understand these 6 realms. And the 6 realms will reveal themselves through Solomon's seal, which is hidden in plain sight in the diagram of everything living.